This is the VandySports podcast on the 440 Sports Network. I'm your host, Billy Derrick, and this week's episode is brought to you by the Wash House, the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, Sutherland and Belk, and Maynard Nexen Government Contracts Group. Topics on today's show, as well as this season's baseball content, are brought to you by the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company. They are a family-owned, third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro. That partnership began over 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee. They now serve all over the South, Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, and North Georgia. For more info, visit their website at mpmci.com. All right, today's news is brought to you by the Wash House. They are a presenting sponsor for basketball season. They've got 2 convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. All right, special guest on today's episode, Norman Jordan, former record-breaking running back at Vanderbilt from 1979 to 1982, played under Fred Pancoast and George McIntyre, and he's also the color analyst on the Vanderbilt Radio Network. You can hear him on 102.5 The Game, not this Saturday. So, Norman, get your weekend, get your Saturday off, but you guys will head down to Oxford next Saturday, and you'll be on the call there with Andrew Allegretta, Kevin Ingram as well, and everybody a part of that. Norman, I brought you on here today. First off, one of my mistakes this week was missing our normal allotted time. I was supposed to record this with Luke Wyatt, but I ended up shooting you a text, and I'm glad you're able to join me. And I've got a lot of mailbag questions to get to, but I want to start overall. We're past the halfway point, right? First bye week. Vanderbilt will have another bye coming up right before Tennessee. They head up to Knoxville. Where's this team at in your mind, Norman? I mean, did that Georgia game, and this is actually one of the questions, but did that Georgia game sort of give this team a little bit of life heading into this bye week, maybe?
Well, I think it did. If you go back and look early in the season, if they played like that early on, again, certainly they're not going to see another team any more talented than this Georgia team. I think it gave them a boost. I think they went out and took care of the football, went out and played hard, executed better than they have been executing. So, I played against Georgia 4 times, I guess, and 2 of those times you felt like a little cat toy where they were just going to make the score whatever they wanted to make it. And then the other 2 times we were pretty good, and scores were very similar, but we certainly gave them more the last couple of years. So, I think Georgia's very interesting. One, that their talent is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And 2, it looks to me like Kirby Smart is basically trying to get Beck ready for the big run at the end of the season. I think he's relying more on his pass game than he normally would. But, who am I to guess what Kirby's trying to do?
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's one of the best coaches in the country, and he's won 2 back-to-back national titles for a reason. And heading into that game, Norman, I mean, Joey and I, Chris and I, we all talked pretty honestly about what we expected in that game. I mean, to be honest, we thought Georgia was going to come in and handle Vanderbilt, but Vanderbilt blocked out the noise. They blocked out everything that, as Clark Lee says all the time, insulate the program, and they did that. And I was impressed. I came away impressed, and I think if you're a Vanderbilt fan and you didn't come away impressed, and on the other hand, if you came away disappointed, I don't really know what to tell you. I just think there were, it's Georgia, right? You got to take it with the grain of salt. You're not playing. If this was UNLV, Alabama A&M, that's a totally different story. But this was Georgia on national TV, and Vanderbilt, I thought, held their own for most of that game. Now, the scoreboard probably wasn't totally indicative, Norman, but I came away really impressed with that group and how they were ready to play. They could have easily folded up the tent, and because, Norman, they hadn't scored a touchdown on Georgia since 2019, right? And the combined score of the last couple of games was 117-0, right? So to even put up 3 touchdowns, 3 scores is encouraging.
Yeah, that's one of the things I told Andrew Allegretta before the season. One of my goals for the team was for Georgia and Tennessee in particular to know that they played a game when they played Vanderbilt.
Right.
And Georgia certainly knew. I mean, you were going for a 2-point conversion to take it down to, 30-22. So, I mean, they certainly came in here and found out, that we're in a game right now. So I enjoyed it very much. And again, not not to sing the praises of Georgia too much, but it's just fun to watch a team that talented. But I loved watching Vanderbilt play. I
Yeah,
I thought they went out and getting that first score early, I think changed the entire tenor of the game.
agree, agree. And I mean, I'm with you, Norman. I mean, I was up there in the booth, and it is fun to watch Georgia, but to see Vanderbilt rise to the occasion was also encouraging and fun. And so I think for a lot of these fans, you lost the game by 17, but you did cover and you found a way to be somewhat competitive. So I think that is encouraging. But Norman, we've got a lot of mailbag questions, and we're finally getting to them. I posted these on Sunday, so we've had a lot of people waiting on these. So we'll start at the quarterback position, and we'll get right to it. Of course, Ken Seals has played what, Norman, the last 3-4 games for
Yeah,
Vanderbilt. So
probably 3.5, I would say. Yeah,
yeah, 3.5. So and he's taking care of the football. I think only 2 turnovers. The interception against Missouri in the red zone, and then the interception against Georgia right before the half, which was crucial to Georgia. I think getting some momentum heading into the half, and then they possessed the ball for like the entire third quarter. But Ken Seals is taking care of the football. We haven't seen AJ Swan. He is back at practice, and Clark said he has looked like his normal self again. I think that's encouraging to hear if you're a Vanderbilt fan. But the question here is from VU Matt 23. Assuming everyone is healthy, who should be the starting quarterback? And you're not you're not the head coach here, Norman. You're not making the call, but just sort of assess that position and what this decision will be like and is like for the staff right now.
well, first of all, Vanderbilt was in a pretty good position to have a backup quarterback, with as many reps as Ken Seals had
Right.
coming into the season. Also, in a good advantage to have a quarterback that stayed involved, who looked like, he's not going to play much this year, but Ken really stayed involved. So my hat's off to him. I really appreciate what he's done for the program. And I would expect it to be Ken Seals again. When AJ's arm was banged up, he just didn't have that pop on the ball that he normally has. And he's probably all better right now. But, you gotta beat the champ to be the champ. And so Ken Seals right now is the starter. And he's taking care of the football. He's doing everything the coaches ask him. So I would expect to see him when we go down to Ole Miss.
Speaking of Seals, Norman, against Georgia, I was impressed. I mean, the throw, you saw that quick slant throw to Humphreys. You saw a few throws down the field to McGowan that we really hadn't seen in a while, at least the last several weeks. And it felt like there was more chemistry between the play calling, the quarterback, and the receivers. And you could tell that, there had been some work put in and some adjustments. I mean, you saw some plays you hadn't seen all year. You saw some formations and shifts and motions that you hadn't seen all year. So for Seals, I just think when you saw him against Georgia, that's Georgia, right, Norman? Now you take that to Ole Miss, you take that to Auburn, you take that to South Carolina. That's a winnable. It feels like at least a winnable formula potentially.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a guy spreading the ball around real well. AJ was pretty much getting where he was looking for Will Shepherd and finding him, and Will's getting a lot of touchdowns. But to have a complete team, you got to have several receivers, and occasionally you got to be able to blow the top off and throw the deep ball, and that's what Ken's done. And if you watch him in the games, he came in the UNLV game, and if you watch him in the games after that, he got more and more comfortable back there in the pocket, and now he looks like he looked when he was a freshman and sophomore, from a standpoint of, instead of getting happy feet and kind of panicking, he's stepping up into the pocket and letting those guys rushing on the end come in behind him and stepping into his throws and making good throws. So I've been really impressed with the way he's come in and handled himself.
How about Seals' running ability too, Norman? I mean, we haven't seen a ton of it, but he had that touchdown against Missouri. I think that's another facet that if Vanderbilt tweaks, whether it's scheme or formation, Seals isn't the best athlete on the field, but I mean he is a willing and capable runner. So you think they might run him a little bit more?
If I were running things, which would be a disaster, but if I were running things, I would make sure I ran him at least one time a game, just so they had to respect that. It's almost like having a 12th player on the field
Hmm.
when you got a quarterback that can pull the ball down. Ken's got pretty good speed. He's got a good acumen about knowing when to get down and knowing where the first down is. So I would do it just to keep the other team honest every once in a while.
All right, let's move on here, Norman, to Bex for VU. And I don't think anyone expected a question about Rod Dowhauer, but he asked, what made Rod Dowhauer such a bad fit at Vanderbilt? And of course, that wasn't even a thought, but I've heard some stories about his tenure at Vanderbilt, and I think you know, you know better than me.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. You go from coaching. He came from the pros to the college level, and you go from coaching guys where you've got control over them, but they're also making a boatload full of money.
All
You
right.
don't have any limited hours. You don't have anything like that. They don't have to go to class and all that. So I think that was probably a little bit of a shock to him to have that, and then to have somebody on staff like Woody Woodenhofer that Woody's he's as big as all outdoors, and when he's on there, he gets center stage because he was such a great defensive mind. So, I'd say the combination of coming down from the pros and having, and I'm not saying in any form or fashion that Woody
Mm-hmm.
did anything wrong, but Woody's he's a big personality, and you've got somebody like that, it's going to get a lot of attention.
We could have a whole podcast about some of these Vanderbilt coaches. I mean, you played under Fred Pankos, McIntyre. I mean, there's a lot of history with this program. I'd love to do a podcast with whether it's you, Watson Brown. I'm hoping to get Watson Brown on down the road, but I think there's some stories, some layers to a lot of these coaches. Norman, let's get to the next one. Poor Vandy fan 615. Uh, any updates on CJ Taylor's injury? Hoping for the best for his sake and the team. And first off, Norman, the update, Clark Lee said that and I just forgot what exactly he officially said, but he didn't say, okay, he said it wasn't season ending. So, but again, it's pretty unclear right now, and it's not looking like Taylor will go against Ole Miss. We'll see if he's able to go down the stretch. Again, we don't know if this is going to be a season ender or not. But first off, Norman, hate it for him. Obviously, one of the more talented players on this team. Hopefully, he gets back to full health. I mean, because he's a guy that I think we can both agree that will play on Sundays. But Norman, for this defense, how needed is C.J. Taylor? And if he's not here for, I guess, the foreseeable future, maybe he shows up for the last couple of games. Who knows? But how much does that impact this defense?
Oh, it's got a tremendous impact because the secondary is already, very thin from injuries already. So if you take away who I would call probably the best guy they've got in terms of being able to do just about everything, he can
Yeah.
rush the quarterback, he can tackle, he can pick the ball off. He just always seems to be around the ball. He's been a pleasure to watch. I watched him come off the field Saturday, and it kind of reminded me of a couple of times that I got hurt, where I almost felt like he was walking off the field more for his mom, for his family, than he was for anything else. He just wanted them to know I'm okay,
Right. Yeah.
and that's kind of what it felt like. So I don't know how long he'll be out. I doubt the coaches know at this point how long he'll be out, but if he is out, he'll certainly be missed because he's just so much fun to watch. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the highlights. I find him before the ball snapped every play. I find out where's CJ because something's about to happen, and it's just been a lot of fun to watch him.
Well, and he almost had that interception. I mean, on the replay, I thought potentially he might have kind of bounced the ball up with, covering the bottom there after tipping Carson Beck, but it did look like the nose of it got the ground there. But man, would that have been one heck of a play? I didn't now real time. I was like, oh no way, but it was closer than I think a lot of people initially thought to really being a pick.
Yeah, and I think if it hadn't happened against that goal backdrop with the V right there, yeah, I don't think you would have been able to tell
That's a
as
good
well.
point. Good point.
So
Yeah.
when I saw it, I thought, when I saw it live, I thought he didn't get it, and then when I saw the replay, I thought he didn't. But it was a heck of a play anyway. So that's just what he does.
Yeah.
He makes things. He's a catalyst.
He's a game wrecker. I mean, you've seen him in Missouri last year, Norman. I know they didn't win that game, but I mean, he catapulted them. And you typically see edge rushers, right? Game wreckers. Donald, who all the good pass rushers. I mean, you played with several, I'm sure, but he's the anchor position, right? He's a linebacker, safety hybrid. So for a guy to be at that position and be as much of a game wrecker as he is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and you watch what goes on during the game, and I'm pretty sure they designed things for him. It's
Yes.
kind of like, what was the safety for or defensive back for the Steelers?
Palomalu.
Yeah, Palomalu. It's like him. You
Yeah.
knew that they were just sitting in the coach's room going, "What can we do with him?" And I feel like they do the same thing with CJ.
Hey Troy, time the snap count right here. Hop over the
Yeah.
line. All right, Norma, let's get to another one here. May username asks, was our competitive game against Georgia a sign that we've turned the corner or another example of Georgia playing down to the competition? For example, South Carolina was up 14-3 at the half in Athens, and Auburn was ahead at the half and tied in the fourth quarter with them. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are, I don't think it was Georgia playing down to the competition as much as it was Vanderbilt playing up to the competition. I just felt like the kids were ready to play. And frankly, I felt like what Clark did about 3 or 4 games ago and just went back and said, look, we're not taking care of the football. We're
Mm,
getting too many penalties. We're doing things that we shouldn't do. We're busting on too many plays. The defense is doing something good. The offense is coming out and doing a 3-and-out. We're just not doing what you got to do with Vanderbilt football. If you look at the stats, it looks like an incredible blowout for Georgia. I think they were over 500
yeah.
yards in offense, and Vanderbilt had 200 or barely over 200. But that's the way Vanderbilt's got to play to win. Is you got to keep the game close and make the other team in the fourth quarter go, wait, we could lose this thing,
Hmm.
and take a little bit of the steam out of them, and I think that's somewhat what happened with Georgia.
Is that how Vanderbilt's always been, Norman? Because I mean, I'm 24. I'm not haven't been around as long as you, but the more people I talk to, it feels like that's a consensus of, look, at Vanderbilt, you're not going to get, the amount of 4 or 5 star guys, if maybe not, if any. I mean, is that a typical formula, at least, from your experience?
The
You
keep
know,
it close to the
yeah,
fourth quarter.
keep it
Yeah,
close, take care of the ball, nothing, nothing to really screw us over, kind of just I don't want to say conservative, but a little conservative. And because going back to Bobby Johnson, I thought that 2008 season was a lot like that. I mean, they were in a
yeah.
lot of low-scoring games, and even as the lights go out on me in here, um, and I was talking to Luke Wyatt too about some of those teams in the 80s and 90s. They were similar style. Now you played in a high-powered offense, so you might that year might have been different, 82 and the early 80s, but I just feel like that's a common theme with Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I think it is. Defensively for Vanderbilt, I don't know what they're going to do recruiting. I see the talent level certainly up. I think that the down linemen are as good as I've ever seen here. For with depth and all that, and the
Mhm.
linebackers are good and all that. But I still think you're not going to be an overpowering defense. You're going to have to be if not a bend but don't break. You're just going to have to be one of those teams that makes the other team earn their scores.
Yeah.
Make them do 12 play drives. If you do a 12 or 15 play drive, chances are you're going to make a mistake in there. And I think that's what they've got to do defensively. And offensively, they can't go out there. Yeah, we played high powered offense when I was there. And the defense we'd go score. And I think our average scoring was under 2 minutes a drive.
Mm,
And the defense would be going, what don't score so fast. We're like, look, go do 3-and-out. We'll come right back out and play. I mean,
right.
but they've got to get to where they can keep the defense off the field. The defense isn't going to go out and just shut a team like Georgia down. So you got to keep them in there and keep them fresh. I do think Vanderbilt's had an advantage they haven't been at for a while, and that you're seeing more playing time for more kids. And one
Yeah.
of the things that's been disappointing about the year this year is you're having to lean on a lot of freshmen and
Yep.
sophomores, and you're just not as good if you don't have those game time reps. It's the way I've always put it is, if you're thinking you're not playing football, and it's kind of a way of saying, you play your best football when it's subconscious. You do it without thinking about it. And if you're thinking too much about what that guy just did, then he's by you and gone by the time that you understand what's going on. So you just have to learn to react and be coached up so much that that's what you do, is just react.
Right. Coming into the season, Norman, too, I don't know that we expected Richie Hoskins, to have 2 touchdowns on the year. That's kind of where this program's at, right? Whoever, if you're playing well in practice, if you're performing well, if you're pulling your weight, you're going to play, right? And we've seen Will Shepherd the last couple of games, maybe not be as explosive, although he did have that crazy catch against Georgia. So it'll be interesting to see how they get him involved. But you talk about the offense, and this is kind of a question of my own, a follow up. What do you do to stay on the field? I know that's probably a dumb question. Obviously pick up first downs, but with where this offense is at, let's picture the Ole Miss game, right? You go down to Oxford, you've got Ken Seals as your starter, and you saw them pick up some first downs against Georgia, but they were still pretty inefficient on third downs. I think they finished 2 for 7 at the end of the game. Georgia was 9 for 13. So how do they stay on the field, Norman?
Well, for me, it's keeping yourself in manageable third down situations. If I'm at 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, I've got a whole lot better chance of
Mm-hmm.
getting that first down than I do at 3rd and 8, and you see a 3rd and 12 and things like that. And that you've only got a handful of plays that you can run that can
Right.
get you 8 or 12 yards, and that lets the defense. If I'm a pass rusher, I just lay my ears back and go after the quarterback. And if I'm a defensive back, I wait for a mistake and look for a pick off. So, if you put yourself in those situations, you take the run away. Linebackers are dropping out just as soon as that ball snapped, because they know you're not going to run the ball.
Well, and that feeds right into our next question here, Norman, from VU STEM, Marcia. She says she's talking about the inability to run the football. She says that has limited the passing game and prevents us from sustaining drives and converting third downs. I think we can agree on that. And she pointed to what the issue, she's trying to figure out what the issues are within this running game. She asks, is it scheme, leverage, continued poor execution? Um, inexperience. I think there are some inexperienced guys on the offensive line, but I mean, for the most part, it's a pretty experienced group. You know, what do you look at when you look at the offensive line, and why they maybe haven't been able to run the ball as well as they wanted to so far?
I think with this zone blocking, and not to get too technical, because I'm not capable of getting too technical, but basically, maybe your guard and your tackle are going to come out and block the defensive end together, but then you see the linebacker coming, then the guard's going to get off of the end and go after the
Mm-hmm.
linebacker. And I think it's more of a chemistry thing than anything else. It's a trust issue. It's knowing that you're going to make the right read. There are 4 or 5 decisions being made at the snap of the ball by all these linemen. And am I going to make the right decision? Can you trust me to make the right decision? And if you do, you're going to block all that much harder on the defensive end, because I'm going to get the linebacker, and this play is going to work. And I think that's what a lot of it is. It's with the zone blocking. I think it's such a chemistry issue, and I have brought this up to some of the coaches, and they agree. I said, I'm not sure you always put out your best 5 linemen. You put out your 5 linemen that play the best together.
Mm-hmm.
And with that zone blocking, if you see that, and everybody's doing it now, and it's ingenious the way they came up with it. But when you've got that, if you don't really trust the guy to make the right read there at the split second, subconsciously, as we were talking about earlier, then you just don't have that drive to take care of your guy, because you're afraid that the linebacker is going to come through and clean everything up. So it's probably a terrible answer to a really good question, but I think it's chemistry. I think it's guys working together, almost like watching gymnasts doing things together.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things where when it clicks, and when it doesn't, it looks like a train wreck.
Let's get to P Universe here. If you, Norman, were Clark Lee and you were told you have 2 more years to turn things around, but you have to make changes immediately to show the administration and fans that you were the right man for the job, What are the first two changes you would make? You can't answer that as you wish.
Yeah. Well, don't put me on the spot or anything. Uh, you
And
know,
this can be scheme, whatever,
I've always said, and I'm not advocating changing coaches or anything like that, but I've always said if I were head coach, I would tell every coach on my staff, you've got 2 years to prove to me that you're in the top half of my staff, and if you don't, then we're going to be looking elsewhere. And I think if you're just upfront with people like that and find out, are you getting the job done? And if you're not, can I help you get the job done? And if I help you and it's still not happening, something's not clicking. And I don't know all these coaches. And I don't know what's working or what doesn't work. I know a lot of them, but I couldn't evaluate them if you held a gun to my head. I just don't know who's doing a great job. But you look at what's on the field and you see the way the kids play, that's reflective of coaching, but it's also reflective of your players. And, I see more talent out there than I've seen in a while for Vanderbilt. So, I think the whole thing Clark's got to do is coach these kids up. You got to coach them so much better than you do. I keep thinking back to that 2-point conversion Vanderbilt tried, and Lassiter, the defensive back, looked like he
Mhm.
jumped over tall buildings to
Yeah,
knock the ball down. Like, who can do that?
that's Jimmy's and Joe's, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's one of my things I would do is I've always said it. If I were doing that, I would say you got 2 years. Show me you're one of the best coaches I've got.
Let's go to Nash Native 615. Let's see here. It's a big question about seals and swan. And basically, the question revolves around here it is. Should the results of the season be more important determining the starting quarterback for Ole Miss or who was recruited by the staff and who wasn't? And Norman, I mean, all fair. And even, when we were talking about Swan and Seals, Seals has protected the football, and this is nothing against Swan, right? He's a sophomore, right? He's uber talented. We know how talented he is, but within this season right now, you think Seals is the better option?
Well, first of all, let me say with AJ, how many times have you seen a quarterback have a great freshman year because he's just basically living off of what he could do in high school. He doesn't know what he's not supposed to do
Mm-hmm.
when he gets to college. And then you get to college, and after your freshman year, they start telling you, no, you can't throw back against your body again, in the middle of the field because it'll get picked off. So you have so many things going on in your head that you can't, you're thinking more than you should be thinking. And I know having played call come in. Having played
You're good.
Taylor, I know that Whit instantaneously knew what he was going to do with the ball,
Talking
and
about Whit Taylor.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's one of the things that you got to get to. You don't get to it real quickly, but you do get there, and all of a sudden, it's like I was telling one of the guys I used to play with. He said, I said, you should know where you're going after your first step. You should know it that quickly. So that's really, I guess, what I'd say. AJ's very talented. Unfortunately, this is what happens in college football today. You're recruiting your own
Mm-hmm.
every year, so you got to handle AJ as well as you can handle him. Build him up as much as you can build him up. But what's happened has happened, and just go back in and say, look, you're our guy coming back. Let's go play football.
All right, we've got a question for VU Perrier. This is directed at Luke, but I'm not sure if you know who Steve Crosby is, offensive coordinator Steve Crosby. This question: do you have any Steve Crosby stories? I thought he was very underrated.
Wow. No, I don't, unfortunately.
Okay, I didn't know. I mean, I don't know who that is. I'm sure Luke would. It was directed at Luke.
Well,
I didn't know
you
if you
you
knew who
you
he
said
was.
you said earlier you made one mistake, and I think I'm your second mistake of the day. So sorry, I do not know that answer.
I don't know him either. Let's see here. Go Doors 94. Probably didn't help that Dowhauer was trying to run a West Coast offense with DiNardo's option players. Okay,
Yeah,
that
very good point.
you could have that. All right, well that's all the questions, Norman. I've got one more here for you. I don't want to keep you too long. And again, this is the bye week episode here, but for Vanderbilt right now, and we talked about the quarterback. We talked about the defense, and I think we didn't talk about defense much, but I mean overall, especially against Georgia, I felt like they did what they could, and with the players they had. I mean they're so banged up right now, so I think that's the first thing: getting healthy during this bye week. But you got 4 games left, Norman. What do you want to see? And again, I'll probably talk to you within the next 4 weeks at some point again. But what are a couple of things you're really looking for down the stretch of this season to basically convince you that this team can get on the verge of potentially making postseason and showing signs of improvement, taking a step rather than taking a step back in this growth?
Yeah, I don't think it's anything terribly complex. It's stuff I talked about earlier. It's not getting the stupid penalties, not getting any penalties. Playing disciplined football. It's taking care of the football. It's offensively. If you get a turnover, go get 6 or 3 points out of it, and show your defense that you're playing complementary football. That's really, I think, what Clark's looking for the end of the season. And of course, you're always looking for effort. You're looking for that guy that just wants to be out there. He loves playing the game, and he's getting better and getting better. So that's really what I'm looking at when I watch these guys. And the thing that I find interesting is I don't see any quit in these guys.
Yeah.
I've seen teams before where you could kind of watch them put their hands on their hips and start going, well, there it goes again. There's that play that went against us. I don't see that from these guys. I think they've got a lot more upside than it would appear at this point in time. I think they slightly overperformed last year, going 5-7 and getting 2 SEC wins. I think they've underperformed this season, but I think it's all just a flick of the switch mentally in their subconscious to where they go, hey, we're pretty good. It kind of happened to us when I was playing. We looked around one day and we kind of went, hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah,
And
I was told, and I don't know if you were on this team. I was told, and maybe this was Watson Brown as a head coach. They had a season late in the year. They won 4 out of their last 5 games, and they were at the point before that where they were really struggling. And I don't think you were on that team. I don't know what year it was. The 80s and 90s Vanderbilt football run together for me, but I was told that, and I think that reigns true with this team, Norman. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen. But I think they're excited about these last 4 games because they think they've got what they need to pick off a couple of wins here.
yeah, and that's the thing. This isn't stuff that coaches can coach. This is guys in the locker room where you
Flipping
kind
a
of one
switch,
day, huh? I'm sorry.
flipping the switch.
Yeah, you look around and you go, hey, we're not bad. We can do some things, and then you just figure out what it is you can do, and you just do it repeatedly. And offensively, back when we were good, we felt like we dictated everything that went on. We felt like the only way that anybody stopped us was if we messed up,
Hmm.
and
That's a
that's
good
kind
place
of
to be.
yeah, that's the attitude that they've got to get to. Is you can't stop us, we can stop us, but you can't.
Whit Taylor, Alma Matthews.
Yeah.
Who else am I forgetting? Jim Arnold at the punter position. I mean, athletes on defense. And I actually got my hands on a highlight tape of that season. I don't know if you've seen it before. Charlie Mack Alexander is on the call for a lot of them. It's pretty special. So I think that's a special team in a lot of Vanderbilt fans' minds and hearts. And I think it's always cool to compare, seasons and talent, quarterbacks, players. I don't know if there's ever been a quarterback quite like Whit Taylor. And, I mean, of course, you were alongside with him. So that's always fun. And Norma, a lot of times it takes one play, right? I mean,
Yeah.
one touchdown that you haven't seen all season, and you go, wow, you never know. So, and it'll start not this weekend, again, off this weekend. They head to Oxford next weekend for a night kickoff, 6:30. You can watch it on the SEC network. But more importantly, you can listen to Norman Jordan and Andrew Allegretta on the call, 102.5 The Game. And also, if they're not available on 102.5 The Game, if there's any conflict with the Preds, you can check them out on 94.9 the fan. But that's been the mailbag, and it's been brought to you by Sutherland and Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If you or a loved one has been hurt or in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call, 615-846-6200, to see what your rights are and if they can help. This podcast has always been free, and we plan for it to always be free. So here's how you can help keep it that way. Give the podcast a review and a 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. If you're listening and haven't subscribed to VandySports.com yet, please do. It's $99 per year or $99 per month and helps us tremendously. Subscribe to our Vandy Sports YouTube channel. And also, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70.com. Norman Jordan has been our guest, former Vanderbilt running back. Norman, really appreciate you taking the time. Enjoy your off weekend.
Thank you, Billy. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks, Norman. All right. That's it.